Sagittarius. Last week, you started to feel that something was off. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was there. A quiet pause inside your chest. Maybe it came as a strange silence in a conversation. Maybe as a moment where you stopped and thought, wait, is this still me? That week was a whisper, and you felt it even if you couldn't explain it. But this week is a calling. Things don't feel the same. The people, the pace, the places that used to feel okay now feel heavy. You might not even know what's wrong. All you know is that something's shifting and you can't unfeel it anymore. This week won't pass like usual. You may feel out of sync with your own life, like you're standing in the middle of a scene that no longer fits. The version of you that used to nod along, smile politely, and keep peace, they're slipping. And maybe that's not something to fix, maybe it's something to follow. What I'm about to tell you, this isn't just an astrology forecast. It's a lived experience, a transformation you've already entered, whether you realized it or not. If you're a Sagittarius, or someone carrying that wild, searching fire in your chart, then this week, you're being called by your real name. Not to prove anything, not to pass another test, but to walk into something you didn't know you were finally ready for. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand. You'll see why everything that's shifting now is only guiding you home to the realest version of yourself. If this week feels like a vague turning point, know that it's not just a fleeting emotion. The astrology of this week is placing you in a very specific whirlwind. The sun is moving from Libra into Scorpio, which means the global energy is shifting from keeping the peace to digging into the truth. And for Sagittarius, that's a sharp collision, because Sagittarius is the seeker of meaning. But when everything you once believed to be right, enough, or peaceful suddenly feels suffocating, you begin to ask yourself, then what actually holds meaning now? This week, those questions are no longer just private reflections, they're a call from the universe. And this time, you can't mute that call like you did before. As a Sagittarius, you don't tolerate feeling confined or out of rhythm. That's why every year, around late autumn into early winter, when the sun begins to enter the Scorpio-Sagittarius zone, you get triggered deeply. The universe didn't randomly choose you. You're the one sign that always asks, am I living in a way that truly means something? And because of that, you simply can't live fake for too long in your own life. On top of that, Jupiter, your ruling planet, is forming an aspect with Uranus, bringing the energy of change or be changed. You might think the pressure is coming from work, money, or relationships, but the real pressure is from your soul. It's asking you, do you still want to keep living this life, knowing full well that some parts of it are no longer right for you? And if you've been feeling like you're the only one falling apart, know this, you're not alone. Sagittarians around the world, hearts that feel deeply, minds that crave freedom, are all stepping into the same trial. The universe isn't trying to break you, it's simply calling you back to what you've known deep down all along. You weren't born to survive by pretending, you were born to live by being real. And if you feel like you're being pushed out of your comfort zone, don't be too quick to think you're on the wrong path. It's not because you're weak or not good enough, it's because you've outgrown that space. The roles, the responsibilities, the image you've been holding on to, they no longer fit your soul. The universe isn't punishing you. It's removing the tight outfit you've worn for too long just to look right in other people's eyes. And this weekend it's asking you just one thing. Will you keep shrinking or will you finally grow into yourself? How long have you been living in a state of unclear numbness? Not tired enough to collapse, but no longer inspired enough to feel truly alive. You still wake up on time, you still do what you're supposed to do. You still smile through familiar conversations, But more and more, it feels like you're playing the lead in a movie that no longer fits the script. You can't even remember the last time you laughed and really meant it. The things that used to feel meaningful now just feel like responsibilities. The people who once made you feel warm now only make you feel drained. And slowly, quietly, a thought begins to form in the back of your mind. I'm still alive every day, but why don't I feel like I'm actually living? Maybe it's just one dinner you no longer enjoy but still show up to. A message you respond to with an emoji even though inside you feel empty. A quick yeah you say even when you know you don't mean it. These may seem small, but every time you do that, you're stepping further away from the most honest part of yourself. As a Sagittarius, you always try to appear strong. You wear optimism like armor. You smile when you're tired. You help when you're exhausted. You stay quiet when you want to scream, not because you're weak, but because you don't want to make others uncomfortable. But the more you hold it in, the more suffocating it becomes. And that's exactly what's cracking open right now. Not because of anyone else, not because of any dramatic event, just cracks that have built up over too long, now finally becoming too visible to ignore. And deep down, you already know. You can't go back to pretending you don't feel anything. Yes, you can keep living the way you are. You can keep waking up, working, smiling on cue, getting everything done like the strong person you are. No one will blame you, but no one else can live for you either. And if you keep living like this, one day, it won't just be exhaustion you feel. You'll forget what it's like to be yourself. There's a truth you can no longer ignore. You're standing between two paths. One is pretending everything is fine, pushing yourself just a little more to look strong. The other is admitting, honestly, that you're no longer living in alignment with who you really are. And the hardest part isn't choosing, it's having the courage to name that truth out loud. You've stayed silent for so long, you've almost forgotten you ever had a voice of your own, that you once had desires that were yours and yours alone, that you used to know what felt right and what didn't, but every time you said yes to keep the peace, every time you bit your tongue to make others comfortable, every time you said, "I'm fine," when your heart was breaking, you stepped further away from yourself. No one's forcing you to choose right now, but the silence inside you is growing louder each day. It's no longer a soft unease. It has become an empty space. And if you keep letting that emptiness spread, there will come a time, even if you don't mean for it, when things won't break open by choice. They'll break apart by collapse. So the real question isn't should I or shouldn't I? The real question is, how much longer can you endure living like this? You've gotten used to compromising, but can you ever get used to losing yourself? Forever? Something will happen this weekend, not an explosion, but a quiet impact that feels deeply real. A passing comment that stings more than usual. A message that makes you realize someone isn't on your side anymore. A morning where you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back at you. It won't be loud, but it will be deep. Enough to make you stop pretending. For some, it'll be a conversation. For others, a silence that's stretched too long. And for many, it won't come from the outside at all, but from within. A quiet voice that finally says, enough. So clear that you won't be able to unhear it. That moment will make you want to react the way you always have. Smooth things over. Step back. Delay the decision. But this time will be different. Not because you've suddenly become stronger, but because you're too tired to keep swallowing it down. The universe didn't create this moment to test you. It created it to unlock a part of you that even you had forgotten. And when that moment comes, don't dodge it. Don't fix it. Don't try to maintain the peace. Because true peace doesn't come from suppression. It comes from facing what's real. This isn't a collapse. This is a turning point. And if you step through it, you'll never go back to being the same. You may think you're not ready, but the truth is, you've been preparing for this a long time. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every moment you bit your tongue and carried on, all of it has led you here. Nothing inside you is meaningless. Nothing in your past is wasted. And it's precisely because you've reached this point that the universe is letting it happen now. Change never happens only in the mind. When you start living truthfully with yourself, everything around you begins to shift. Relationships that are no longer built on honesty will naturally fall away. You don't have to force anything to end. They simply won't be able to hold on to you anymore. You'll start to see who truly understands you and who only understood the version of you that kept everything together. Conversations that once drained you will grow quiet. People you used to perform around will lose their place in your life. And if love remains, it will rise from truth, not compromise. It's not just people. Your work will change too. The things that once made you feel valuable but now suffocate you will become undeniable. You won't have the energy to hold on to roles that no longer fit, not because you're giving up, but because your soul no longer wants to squeeze into something just to make it work. And most importantly, the biggest shift won't happen outside of you. It will happen in the way you see yourself. You'll stop blaming yourself for having held on too long. Instead, you'll feel gratitude for staying awake enough to come back home, even after living disconnected for so long. Rebirth isn't about becoming someone else. It's about peeling back every false layer so you can return to yourself. No more asking for permission. No more hiding. No more pretending to be fine just to please others. Just you, clear, honest, and brave enough to live in your own truth. You won't be the same person anymore, and strangely enough, you won't want to be, because once you've lived as your true self, you can't unknow that feeling. You'll begin to understand peace was never about keeping everyone happy. It's about finally stopping the betrayal of your own soul. There's a strange moment that happens when you start living more truthfully. You no longer want to do the things you used to, but you also don't yet know what you want instead. Everything familiar begins to fall away, and the new, it hasn't arrived yet. You look around and see that everything is still running as usual, but you're no longer who you used to be. And that's the most unstable part of the journey. You're changing, but you don't know yet who you're becoming. You don't want to go back, but you don't really know where to go forward either. You're still working, still replying to messages, still smiling at the right times, but something inside you starts to whisper, none of this really feels like you anymore. It's not that you're lazy, it's not that you're tired of life, it's just that you're too awake now to keep pretending and too exhausted to keep pushing forward in search of something unclear. And that is when you need stillness. Not to stop, but to begin listening again to what's truly calling you next. There will be a bit of mourning. You'll look back at things that once brought you joy, places where you once felt you belonged, and now they just don't fit. Not because they've changed for the worse, but because you're no longer who you used to be. And even if you try to force yourself to go back, it won't feel right anymore. People you once kept at a polite distance to avoid tension, you'll notice you no longer feel the need to do that. The roles that once gave you a sense of value now only leave you drained. You'll start cutting back. Fewer conversations, fewer yeses, but also fewer moments of feeling disconnected, because you've finally accepted you don't need to fit everywhere. You might find yourself quieter, turning inward more often. But that isn't loneliness. It's the phase where you begin to actually hear yourself again. For so long you've lived in noise. Now you're clearing it out, making space to listen to every small desire, every quiet limit, every old dream you'd once buried. There will be people who don't get you, who say you've changed, gone cold, become hard to understand. But don't let that shake your path, because if you have to shrink to be loved, that was never love to begin with. Sometimes, someone leaving is really just you coming home to yourself. You don't need a grand plan right now. You don't have to transform everything overnight. The only thing you must do is stop trying to return to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. Some doors don't need to be closed, because you'll never walk back through them again. You've come too far to go back, and you've gone deep enough to stop asking, am I just being too emotional? No, you're not exaggerating anything. The pain you're feeling isn't weakness, it's the sound of a layer cracking open inside you. The universe doesn't send these tremors to break you. It's simply unlocking a part of you that's been sealed off for too long. You've been holding everything together for the sake of peace, but that version of peace no longer feeds your spirit. And this pain, it's here to make you pause, exhale, and finally place a hand on your heart and ask, how much longer do I want to live like this? You are not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not being dramatic. You're simply returning to a deeper truth, one that you've been inching toward for a long time. And anyone who's ever walked through real transformation will tell you this: you're not hurting because you've done something wrong. You're hurting because you're being stretched to make room for a life that's more honest, more whole. And once you've begun stepping into that life, nothing will look the same. The way you love will shift, the way you work, the way you forgive, the way you say no, the way you listen, all of it will begin to change. Not because you're trying to reinvent yourself, but because you simply can't go back to living the way you did before. This weekend is not a full stop, it's a comma, the beginning of a new chapter you've never truly let yourself live. When you finally release what no longer feels right, the universe starts sending in everything you've never had, not because it didn't exist, but because you weren't ready to receive it. Until now. Next week, you may not see a miracle right away, but you'll notice subtle shifts you would have overlooked before, a sudden invitation, a new connection that feels oddly familiar from the very first glance. An opportunity you once ignored now suddenly makes your heart skip. That's not random. That's how new energy tests you. Are you really living in truth yet? Are you ready to choose differently? And as you step into June, guided by Mercury, Venus, and a new moon in the air signs, the dreams you never dared to say out loud will begin to take shape. This is the month of honest words, decisions free from your past, and the moment you finally realize you no longer have to choose between being loved and being yourself. You don't need to make a grand gesture, but you do need to live truthfully, day by day, because from now on, your life won't be built on force or performance anymore, but on the frequency of your inner truth, and that frequency is already starting to attract everything that resonates with who you really are. This weekend marks the close of an old cycle. Next week will be your very first step onto solid, honest ground. In the end, you might forget every word in this video, but remember one thing: every pain you've ever gone through didn't come to destroy you, it came to open you. Every moment you struggled with yourself wasn't because you were weak, it was because you were shedding a version of yourself that had already expired. You don't need all the answers right now. You just need to take one step each week, a step that's truer, clearer, and closer to who you really are. Because the truth is, life doesn't ask for your perfection. It only asks for your presence. Fully, honestly, and with a courage to stop turning away from what you truly want. If there's one thing to carry with you after this weekend, let it be this: you don't have to fight to be loved. You don't have to pretend to be accepted. You don't have to outshine others to be seen. You only need to live aligned with what you already know is real inside you. And here's the beautiful part. When you start living from that truth, life starts showing up truthfully too. People arrive without needing you to perform. Opportunities come because you are fully yourself. Dreams that once felt too far away begin to land right in front of you, all because you finally stopped running from your own essence. So, if you're still hesitating at the door of change, remember this. You don't have to walk through with perfection, you just have to walk through with truth. Where are you in this journey? Drop a comment so I know you're not walking it alone. And tell me, was there something in this video that made you want to come home to yourself again?